Hello, so glad you can join us on the morning program, The Dailies, where we look at some of the current stories on the front page of the paper. Quite a number of stories. We just hope that you can do well to drop your comment, your views on Facebook, as they are always, relevant and very important to us on the show. I am Sele Elisha Dasham, and we will be doing this program together with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sele.
Alright, we have quite a number of papers to run through, starting with Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, the first story, Lagos inks Memorandum of Understanding for Construction of Lekki Airport. Serap sues Tinubu over alleged 167 billion naira project fraud in NDAs. Access Holdings thrive post-Weekway, a year of remarkable growth. And we have a story on behalf of agitation and a statement from Nnamdi Kanu. I have committed no crime, don't beg for my freedom. Kingpins excrete 125 wraps of heroin in Lagos Port Harcourt airports. The big story on Nigerian News Direct, manufacturers NECA bemoan increase in NPA and customs levy hike. Says hike will increase smuggling, threaten investments. You can find details on page 4. I believe we have a picture story where we can see the Lagos State Governor where they are signing in the Memorandum of Understanding for construction of the Lekki Airport. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On First News newspaper, IGP moves to enforce retirement for overstaying senior police officers. Detail can be found in the paper. Gunmen abduct Ohanize's youth president in Owerri. We have police launch investigation into the abduction. Fresh outrage as another Nigerian dies in South Africa police custody. Ebonyi governor clarifies local criminals behind Sunday killing, not herdsmen. Ebonyi governor have clarified that local criminals are behind the Sunday killings, not herdsmen. So you can read more detail of that story in the paper. Saudi Arabia limit multiple entry visas for Nigeria and 13 other countries. The big story, NDLEA arrests 2 drug kingpins. Suspect extracted 125 wraps of heroin. Stop begging for my release. I committed no crime, coming from Nnamdi Kanu. And then as well, we have Trump's immigration crackdown. Ex-NIDO official advises Nigerians to stay cautious. Downside of the paper, Falana sue Meta $5 million over false health claim and privacy violation. We have a picture story where we can see the chairman of the Bayelsa Council of Traditional Rulers, along Pandef National Chairman and others, during the courtesy visit to the Bayelsa Traditional Council of Chiefs in Yelugwa, Bayelsa on Sunday. And that's all on First News newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, First Bank Nigerian Holdings 17.65% YTD gains make it best performing Tier 1 bank. Tax reform will spark economic rivalry among states, says Idris. Foreign inflows rise by 53%, its highest in 5 years. You can find details on page 26. Why proposal for 31 new states is not likely to succeed. The big story on the Nation, federal government targets capital market to fund infrastructure. The writer says road, rail, education, health, IT sectors to benefit. IFC team, ICRC to work out modalities. Court OK's FCC pursues power in telecom regulation agency to protect consumers' interest in new tariff regime. You can start with the details of this story on the front page. We have a picture story and also a story. You can find details on page 4 that says troops destroy bandits camp in Zamfara, kill 44. The downside of the Nation newspaper, 2 excrete 125 wraps of heroin. Fire me a comrade in pro-democracy agitation, says Tinubu. You can find details of his statement on page 6, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On this day newspaper, in landmark ruling, court affirms FCCPC regulatory authority in all sector of economy. Says the NCC lack exclusive competition regulation in telecom sector. And then here say declares both regulators share concurrent jurisdiction. Consumer Right Agency hails the judgment, with detail found in the paper. As well, we have Namibia founding father Sam Nujoma dies at 95, with details found on page 5. Tinubu macro world leaders pay tributes to Herbert Wigwin on first anniversary ceremony. We can see the picture story during the remembrance where, of his wife, then Herbert Wigwin and his son. We will recall last year they lost their life in a plane crash. The big story on the paper: NECA man Serica Ford custom fresh 4% levy, NPA 15% hike import charges. The writer here say Employers Association say its NCS desperate attempt to meet 10 trillion naira target. Urges levy will impose additional 2.84 trillion naira in costs. Man kick against Port Authority increase in fees. So you do well to read more detail of that. The picture story: signing ceremony of IFC investment at Lagos Free Zone. This happened on Friday, and that's all on this day newspaper.
A new Nigerian newspaper, Nigeria India set to boost creative industry through collaboration. Kaduna Group backs Governor Obasani, criticizes El Rufai's remark. The big story on the paper: two drug kingpins land in NDLEA net, excrete 124 wraps of heroin. The writer says agency intercepts tramadol consignment in gas cylinder, seizes Canada-bound opioids. And also, alongside the fight against drugs, we can also see a female suspect by the name Choma Okeke apprehended by NDLEA in Kano in possession of 27 blocks of cannabis sativa. Still on Nigerian news, on New Nigeria, UCH Ibadan denies using patience generators, inverters in rendering services. How DPO busted prison officers' criminal gang inside correctional center in Delta. Ariwa youth petition IGP DSS over threat to national stability by Mechi and others. A tragic loss: poor road claims lives of pregnant women, babies in Katsina. Alleged bullying, taking facilities from DUFUTH is fake fabrication from enemies, a statement from the Vice Chancellor. You can find details on page 4, and that's all the news on New Nigeria.
Moving on to Blueprint newspaper, Wiki Bus Terminal has created 3,000 jobs for Abuja residents, coming from Shola Doye. Detail can be found on page 13. On business, US-China trade war blessing to African manufacturers, coming from Palmer. You can read detail of that on page 22. World Cup qualifiers: presidential support for Super Eagles set to be announced. You can read that story in the paper. As anti-drug war intensify, which is a big story and has been making round of the papers we've read so far, NDLEA fuels hitch of heroin. NAFTA seek death penalty for those who are abusing drugs. Where we have the writer here saying two kingpins excrete 125 wraps at Lagos and Port Harcourt Airport. 4.7 billion naira fake drugs destroy at Riwama dump site. More detail of this story can be found in the paper. On mass wedding, Kebbi earmarked 54 million naira dowry for 300 couples. You can read what the governor of Kebbi is doing to approve the release of about 54 million naira as dowry for 300 couples to be joined in a second mass marriage, and this is scheduled for 27th of February, so you can do well to read more detail of that. Unregistered pilgrims, Saudi Arabia restrict multiple entry visa for Nigeria and 13 others. We have LCCI urges federal government to suspend implementation of the 4% levy. Court halts reps from harassing, and then Mutfwan raised the alarm over illegal mining, and this is really alarming. We hope that something will be done about all of this illegal mining, and those who are caught should be brought to book. We have the picture story where we can see the first Assistant Secretary, National Council for Women's Society, Mrs. Halima, the National President, Princess Edna, First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi, and then the first Vice President, Mrs. Ekuk, Financial Secretary, Mrs. Olukemi, and then we have others when the new NCWS executive visited the First Lady at the State House, Abuja. This happened on Friday, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
A Nigerian Tribune NECA rejects new 4% customs levy, warns it will further impoverish Nigerians. Federal government steps into power outage crisis at UCH. Power Minister IBEDC MD visits hospital today. Patients not bringing generators to power words, statement from the management. Investors favor 364-day bonds treasury bills. Call the firm's FCCPC's regulatory authority in telecom sector. Navy intercepts 16 boats loaded with 1,000 bags of rice in Badagry. You can find details on page 27. The big story on the paper: questions persist over PDP National Secretary. Why Board of Trustees backed governors on Anyawu's removal. 1 year after, Tinubu, Macron, Obasanjo, Sanwo-Olu, others paid tribute to Herbert Wikwe. Leadership not title but sacrifice, service to people. Fayemi is saying Tinubu hails his sacrifice in stepping down as APC presidential primary. Two drugs peddlers excrete 125 wraps of heroin at Lagos Port Harcourt Airport. Binani won Adamawa 2023 Guba polls, dismissed wreck insists. Adamawa government challenges him to provide evidence. APC set to hold next meeting, says opposition merely out to grab power for personal aggrandizement. You can find details on page 22, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On leadership newspaper, FCT Bus Terminal construction generate 3,000 jobs. Called the firm's FCCPC authority over telecom sector. And then a fact check, we have why does Kenneth Okonkwo think that PDP leaders are servants to APC. And then trending, Syrup sues federal government over fraudulent contractors. More detail of both trending and fact check can be found on page 2. First Bank Nigeria Holding emerges best performing Tier 1 bank. You can read more detail of that. Saudi Arabia restrict multiple entry visas for Nigeria and 13 other countries. And then the big story in the paper: 3 months after expected mothers yet to access free cesarean section. The writer here saying Nigeria record 1,047 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. We have memorandum of understanding with 20 tertiary hospitals coming from the NHIA. Await list of referral hospitals from states, and then no patient has met the criteria. This is coming from the UATH. You can do out read more detail of the story on page 4. Slave labor: oil company threaten workers with sack in Delta. Farmers flee as bandit kill 5 in Benue. Kanu target polio eradication timeline. And then we have a gas explosion destroy vehicles and shops in Niger. I hope something will be done about the number of gas explosion we are having. It's really becoming alarming. I hope something will be done about that. And then we also have the Leadership Gold Standard Award Picture Series, as usual on the paper, where we're seeing that Olure the third is saying this award means a lot to me. We can see her receiving the award there, and that's all on the Leadership newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, no leader can be effective without stepping on toes, a statement from former President Obasanjo. Why we won't appear before Ikimi panel, Atom and others are saying. First Bank Nigerian Holdings stock gains 17.65%, emerges best performing Tier 1 bank. 70,000 naira minimum wage is the big story. State salaries rise by 90% to 3.8 trillion naira. 27 states depend on federal allocation to pay salaries. Plan 6.259 trillion naira IGR. Free Thai nationals held captive in Gaza return home, where we have the picture story showing them reuniting with their families. Rivers community deserted as cultists kill 19 residents. Drug couriers excrete 125 heroin wraps at Lagos Port Harcourt Airport. Konkoso wooing Arabia Solar to get Southwest votes, and this is a Konkasia chieftain. You can find details on page 37, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Let's take a look at Vanguard newspaper then. On the Vanguard newspaper, Saudi Arabia limits visa for travelers from Nigeria and 13 other countries. Manufacturers fall MPA on 15% port charges hike. Housing shortage worsen as pension funds slash real estate investment, with detail found inside the paper. Now we see that the big story on the paper: Japa underfunding inefficiency undermining public hospitals. The writer here said Japa reduced health professionals from 3,000 in 2017 to 90,000 in 2024. So that is to say that by the end of this year, if something is not being done, more doctors will leave the shores of Nigeria. Privatized specialist hospital for greater efficiency, coming from expert. Say emergency care is undermined, canvass more government investment, with detail found on page 14. Late Herbert Wingwin, a build-out institution and lives. This is coming from Tinubu, Micro, and others are saying this about him. As well, hardship affecting attendance, offering in churches, Anglican bishop laments. Hardship attending attendance and offering in churches, Anglican bishop is lamenting. You can find detail of that on page 10. Suspected Eduduka government chairman warned banks against change of signatories. And then as well on sport, President Tinubu won Super Eagles at the World Cup. This is coming from Deco. You can read detail on page 29. And we have the picture story. This is at the Wingway's first year anniversary. We can see those in attendance and even his family on the front row of the seat there. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, we have recalcitrants sacked, and we have Adamawa wreck in sees Binani won 2023 Guba. Oba of Benin, the silent echoes of tradition, a son's tribute to his mother. You can find details on page 2. The big story: Atiku comments audit of $1.07 billion, cautions against 2025 budget malfeasance. You can find details on page 3. APC will take over Delta in 2027, an assurance from Ned Nwoko. Gunmen abduct Ohane, a youth council president. ZLP elect new national officers. You can find details on page 15. Nigerian man Benjamin Okoli dies in South African police custody, sparking outrage. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, let's take a look at where we have First Bank Nigerian Holdings emerges best performing Tier 1 bank with 17.65% year till date gain. More detail can be found in the paper. Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, NECA, warns of MPA custom charges impact on businesses and Nigerians. Snakes, monkeys, others must not swallow $1.07 billion health budget. Atiku is warning. We remember issues where we have monkeys and snakes swallowing money, and here we're seeing Atiku trying to say that he hoped that that will not happen to the health budget this year. You can look up that story on page 3. Why some leaders suffer withdrawal syndrome after leaving office, by Fayemi. You can find detail of that on page 7. The big story for the Guardian newspaper is regarding the 107 days of blackout. Patients, caregivers desert UCH ward as health services decline. You can find detail of that story on page 6. Police heard court ruling to reabsorb retired officers. Serap sued Tinubu AGF, that's the Attorney General of the Federation, over alleged 167 billion naira fraud by contractors. More detail can be found on page 5. Development equity concern fuel controversy over proposed dates. Detail found on page 6. As well, we have the IFC invests $50 million in LFZ to support industrial growth. This is regarding finance and economy, which you can find on page 22. We have 2 picture stories. Do well to get the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Matrix newspaper, World Bank to boost infrastructure financing in Nigeria with joint capital market program. ICRC vows to unlock capital markets potential to fund PPP projects. Shock as Liverpool, Tottenham crash out of FA Cup. 1 year after Tinubu, Sanwo-Olu, others remember Herbert Wigwe. The light he lighted in our nation will never be dimmed. A statement from President Tinubu. Tinubu rolling out deliberate policies to transform economy. We have Igwe, CRFN, and registrar saying the big story on the paper: 167 billion naira project fraud in 31 MD8. Serap sues Tinubu. The writer under the story calls for publication of contractors who failed to execute projects, says they've restricted access of poor Nigerians to public goods services. Federal government cracks down on ghost workers, sets February 17 deadline for verification. Lagos increases red line rail services to 9 trips daily. 4% FOB charge will hurt businesses and consumers, Saraki saying. Namibia's founding father, Sam Nujoma, dies at 95. We have an entertainment story. You can find details on page 21 and a picture with the caption "Boosting Nigeria's Economy," where we can see the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, meeting with leadership of the World Bank's International Finance Corporations at an event recently. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Right, before we continue further with the paper review, let's take a time out. When we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. If you're just tuning in, we have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, and we hope that you can do well to go through it, drop your own comment, your own views regarding any of the event or the story on the paper that have actually gotten your attention. We really love to have your own feedbacks regarding that. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel.
Welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is Daily Independent newspaper. 167 billion naira MDA scam. Serap sued Tinubu for not prosecuting contractors. You can do well to read detail of that story in the paper. Regarding health sector's $1.07 billion must not be swallowed by snakes, monkeys, Atiku is warning. You can read more detail of that story in the paper. Report predicts price stabilization amid record high food inflation. You can read more detail of what that means. NECA offers panacea to unemployment crisis. You can read more detail of that on page 29. Nigeria-Israel Mall Joint Commission dialogue. Minister seeks support in tackling food insecurity with detail on page 6. Regarding the PDP crisis, any member who disobeys Board of Trustees will be thrown out, coming from Bode Church. And then we have the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission excited as court affirms regulatory authority in telecom sector. You can do a detail of that in the paper. And NAFTA DG saying one who kills through fake drugs deserves death penalty. You can find more detail of what she has to say regarding that on page 29, and that is all in Daily Independent newspaper.
On Voice of Liberty, Terry Wyer's closet 8 Kenneth Tesso Gado is dead. Northern ministers mobilized to defend Tinubu amid growing opposition. Saudi Arabia limits visas for travelers from Nigeria, 13 others. The big story concerns Mount over alleged favoritism towards unlicensed Arewa 24 TV, urges Tinubu to intervene. Coalition of Northern media stakeholders has made a pressing call to President Tinubu to address the alleged unlicensed operations of a foreign-owned broadcast outfit, Arewa 24 TV, accused of undermining the region's indigenous private TV channels. Ex-Senator President Saraki slams federal government over customs 4% FOB import levy. Rahamania oil boss Bashar jailed in Dubai for financial fraud. Alleged 167 billion naira MDA's fraud syrup sues Tinubu over failure to persecute contractors. Ahead of 2027, new political realignment redefine roles of Atiku Obi in Konkoso. And that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
Paper, where we have fintechs eat banks, 80 trillion naira transfers launch. You can read more detail of what is happening in the tech industry over there. Here we have Naira public borrowing seen pushing money supply growth by 51%. The big story on the paper, rice output hits 4-year low on high costs. And then here the writer say farmers say input prices have risen 5 times over the period. And then millers can't get enough rice from farmers, and you can wonder why there is no enough rice for millers to actually, work. So you can do well to get the paper and read more detail of that, and that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On the Matrix Sport, the first story, Mbappe surpasses Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar's record. In Syria A, Daily Bashiru on target as Lazio trash Monza. Shockers Liverpool Tottenham crash out of FA Cup. Vinicius Jr. rejects new Real Madrid deal, and that's all news on the Matrix Sport.
Alright, let's take a look at the National Economy newspaper. Custom CG Adeniyi others get leadership awards. You can read more detail of that on page 5. And then we have a table for the currency buying, selling, as well as commodity prices at the end of the market of last week, which was 7th of February 2025. So you can look at the prices of what commodities are: Brent, gold, silver, as well as gas. The big story on the paper, local government financial autonomy faces another setback. The writer here says as states continue to receive allocations while local government failed to provide audited accounts. You can read more detail of what the local government is saying regarding that. The association as a whole, what are they saying? And then as well, we're saying will fine stop cash scarcity? This is a question. Will fine stop cash scarcity? You can find that question and the answers where I believe on page 15, and that's all on National Economy newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, clutch is the big story. Monday, Babajide guide Tenerife to third straight win. Daily Bashiru on target for Lazio. At the top of the paper, 2025 AFCON, Leroy tips Eagles for title. Newcastle target Osimhen. Plymouth knockout Reds, where we can see Liverpool out of the FA Cup race. Dailies vows to emulate Yakubu at Blackburn. In Arsenal want record fee for Saliba. Giggs backs Amorim to restore United's glory. Chelsea line up £42 million bid for Semenyo. You can find details on page 4. I won't get sacked, Pep replies fans. Kuti set for African Cup debut in Tunisia. Umokoro sets Nigeria lead at NCAA meet. You can find details on page 2, and that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program, the Dailies, this morning. Thank you so much for keeping a date with us. We look forward again to doing this together with you tomorrow. So do have a lovely Monday.